It's great to see the weather, the level of energy in the auditorium, but if I do not get started now, Franz will ask me to leave. So, good morning everybody. Dear fellow alumni, current students and friends of Iese, and to those of you who are with us today here in the auditorium, but also to the many people who are connected with us online. Welcome to this second day of the Global Alumni Reunion. As President of the Alumni Association, it's wonderful to be here with all of you in this important three-day gathering. This conference, as I said yesterday, is a forum for collaboration, a place where we will place and pool our collective wisdom to confront the challenges businesses are facing around the world, not only geopolitical, but also environmental and sociological. Yesterday, we had great sessions. Thank you, Christophe and Alel, for the great program you put together. We learned from one of the leading pharmaceutical companies on the unique challenges and advantages of leading a mature family company in the current age of rapid innovation in healthcare. We also learned from the founder of Plastic Bank on what real leadership looks like. It was a lesson of energy, passion, and purpose. Our speakers in the afternoon shared with us some key insights on the Global South. It's incredible to see how innovation can cross so many geographies, industries. It was a great session listening to what's going on in India and in Africa. And the unique role that courage plays when you break the mold and you really think big. We had some amazing conversation among us. It was actually fun to get to know more people and to share ideas and experiences. We were thrilled by the panel of experts of entrepreneurs that we are proud to call them our fellow alumni. In all these moments, we can look to the power of our network, our commitment to excellence, and our belief that business can be force for good in the world. Excellence has been our guiding star. We have been taught that real, authentic leadership is a never-ending journey of personal and professional transformation. Our call to action this year, Elevator Entrepreneurship, is very important. As we continue with today's program, talk to our classmates, and get to know other business leaders, I would encourage and invite you to draw from all the entrepreneurial spirit within you and think about how to take ideas higher and further through innovation. I very much hope you will enjoy this interactive session and experience and that we create lasting memories together. This reunion is just one of the many ways Iese5 Alumni Association is committed to serving our community with lifelong learning, connectedness, and positive impact. Our community continues to grow, with over 57,000 leaders around the world, many of them, many of you, members who are sharing your time, your expertise, your resources with us, elevating many of our initiatives. Specifically one, we look at the scholarship fund that we've got that is allowing us to bring in the best talent to this school. Thank you very much. Your support through membership has made all these initiatives possible. To keep learning, growing, sharing, and together with our Dean and our Executive Committee of the Association, we thank you very much for helping us to bring this vision to life. And as we begin the second day, I would love to thank again all of you and welcome to this exciting journey of exploration and transformation. Thank you very much.
So welcome to the second year of the GAR. I hope that some of you celebrated the Gemba alumni gatherings, as well as the celebration of the 20th anniversary of our IMP alumni program. And many visits we also organize and are still ongoing. And today, finally, welcome to your home, your campus. Every creative process involves suffering, uncertainty, deciding whether to take the risk, whether the journey will be worth it, and taking the leap towards the dream that moves you. The creative process of this GAR This year has been no exception. A journey that began with a clear frame from France. Thanks, boss, for giving me a canvas to draw on. And then 3 calls. The first to Chris Schott. How about Chris? If we talk about entrepreneurship this year, still excited from the garden in Munich, he replied, whatever you ask, Mireia, I'm on. The second call to Anna Luz. Her delicate brush was missing from the picture. Educating participants about our emotions was another yes. The third to Jose Maria Ciota from our Entrepreneurship Center, a passionate advocate of deep tech and corporate innovation, always optimist, who offered another yes. We added more brushes, the team from research and insight colleagues, Marta, Phil, to help creating the elegant online of the concept that eluded us. Meetings, agreements, disagreements, moments of wow, others of blockage. Without realizing it, we were already the team to lead this journey. While looking for voices that will awaken our reflection, more artists enter. Corporate marketing, coming and going, whether we should paint in apple green, blue, bubbles, or arrows, to bring elevated entrepreneurship to life. IT guessing how to draw the flexible format program. Countless hours designing the programming site journeys. Stressed because the launch time was on our heels. The painting was still incomplete. We couldn't find a lever that would activate the entrepreneurial spirit within all of you. We reviewed everything developed in experiential learning unit, but nothing. It wasn't scalable, and the risk was too high. Walking through the ruins of Ampurias on Saturday, I thought that if Romans had built an empire, our problem was smaller. And I called Marc Sachon immediately. I remember telling him, only you can help us. And the response was the same. Whatever you need, boss. We'll also need Julia Braden there. I don't know about entrepreneurship. And she was also on board. There were more drawings on the whiteboard in a white working room, adjusting, changing, but we were still few to solve the equation. Mark Sosna from the Learning Innovation Unit entered, Pilar, the facilitators, to shape the questions. After so many artists, Kelvin, my dear colleague from the alumni team, good MBA and engineer, entered to my office and said, Mireia, stop creating. It's time of execution. He deployed an incredible network of meeting committees with our colleagues from CES, Geo, Catering, with relentless execution times. And the alumni team followed as always, following the dream. And the last call was with my colleague Sabrina, 3 days ago. It was very late. It was a brief conversation to tell her to go to bed, that everything will be fine. She almost apologized, saying, I still have things out of control, Mireia. I don't recognize myself. These things is overwhelming me. So I didn't tell her anything then, but I say that today. You don't recognize yourself, Sabrina, because you are already different. In this profound process of growth, learning for and with you, dear alumni friends. I hope you enjoyed this journey as much as we did. Thank you very much.
Good morning. And welcome to this Global Alumni Reunion. Welcome to those here on campus that I can see directly, and welcome, of course, also to all of you who are following online this day of the Global Alumni Reunion.
It's been since 2019 that we have not been holding a global alumni reunion in Barcelona 4 years ago, so we're happy to be back. And we're having a new format, as you can see, which gives us the opportunity to greet all of those who can make it to be on campus with us today. It's good to come together. That's one of the things, of course, we learned through the pandemic, that coming together, maintaining and building this network, these friendships, is very important, and it's an essential part of the Iese community. As a school, we want to contribute to changing the businesses, the world for better, the positive, long-lasting impact that we talk about. And an important element of this is that there is a strong sense of belonging to the institution and the shared values that we all have as alumni of the Iese Business School. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing every day in your organizations, in your businesses. That's the most important contribution that you can be making. And I also want to thank you for the support that in so many ways you're giving to your school. And I wish you all, you'll see, we have new formats, new ways of interacting, a wonderful day here on campus and online of learning together, interacting together, spending time together, and getting to know new people, new alumni friends here at Iese. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day in this alumni reunion.
So, good morning. Also from our side, we are really thrilled together, Professor Zott and myself, to welcome you from the side of the academic directors of this program in a day in which we're going to channel your inner entrepreneur in whatever organization and setting you're finding yourself as a business leader. So my name is Anneloes Raas. I'm a professor of leadership and the head of departments of managing people and organizations here at Iese at the school, as well as the holder of the Putz Chair of Global Leadership Development. So we live, evidently that needs no further remarks in a day of, complexity, geopolitical, economic, social, environmental dynamics that all play a role in the strategic decisions of our organizations. As business leaders, it's crucial to understand and adapt to these dynamics with a sense of care, innovation, and creativity. And with that, I'm very, very excited, with this year's theme of elevated entrepreneurship, because I think it represents, a mindset, with which to work and with which, in the end, work in this very dynamic playing field.
And thank you very much, Anneloes, and a good morning and a warm welcome from my part as well. My name is Christoph Zott. I am Professor of Entrepreneurship here and the head of the Entrepreneurship Department. And so, of course, when Mireia called me, Mireia, where are you? When you called me and you told me the theme of this conference is on elevated entrepreneurship, I was very happy to serve as the co-head. And really excited about this theme because it does signal that we do take entrepreneurship very seriously at Iese. I think it is one of the core pillars of our philosophy of business education, because we believe that entrepreneurship benefits not just startup entrepreneurs, but everyone in their jobs. What is entrepreneurship? Some people have defined it as the process of creating something from nothing. And that sounds like magic, almost. And the end result is often quite magical, but as magical as it sounds, there is a science behind entrepreneurship. And just wanted to mention to you that this science, in fact, shows to us that many of the things that we believe about entrepreneurship are actually not true. They're myths, they're stereotypes. A very persistent myth about entrepreneurship is that many people believe that you have to be born an entrepreneur. It has to be something within you. So you're gifted, you're special, you are an entrepreneur or you're not, right? That's wrong, because research has shown to us that entrepreneurship is something that is learnable and that you can improve on, and that that everybody can in fact exercise. Entrepreneurs are made, not born. A second persistent myth about entrepreneurship is that opportunities for new businesses are kind of out there and waiting to be discovered, almost like Mount Everest, like the biggest mountain. It's there, somebody has to see it, and best, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to see it first. And again, that's maybe sometimes true, but maybe 1 in 1,000 times. The other 999 times opportunities, and all of you who have been entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial, you know that it's not like that. Opportunities need to be created. But the good thing about this is they can be created. So opportunities are not found, they're created. And the third thing about entrepreneurship that people often get wrong is that they think, well, you cannot really be an entrepreneur or successful as an entrepreneur if you're not lucky. So, are you lucky all the time? Who is lucky all the time? Nobody. And I know many entrepreneurs are in fact extremely unlucky. Right? Extremely unfortunate things happening to them, and still they're very successful. So it cannot be about luck. So what is entrepreneurship? In fact, research has shown that entrepreneurship is really a process. And the good thing about processes can be managed, processes can be improved, and in fact, you can learn how to run this process, and that's what we do here at Iese.
Yeah, and I think, one aspect that also from a leadership angle we would often stress when it is about engaging in a process like this, about seeing opportunities that are there, creating this mindset, is that many of these things start with self-awareness. It's one thing, to have the vision, to see the opportunities, and we're going to see some very inspiring examples of that, by the way, today. But the work is only starting then. And in order to make it happen, you need a degree of, the inner capacity, the inner drive, to make it work. And I think that, here at the school, you've witnessed that we focus a lot, on developing leaders who understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their values. So with that, I think it's possible to bring the best version of yourself, if not at every single minute of your day, then at least very, very often and very regularly, by playing to your strengths and by playing by your values. But I would also say being in tune, in a good way with both your strengths and your weaknesses also allow you to design great teams. Because in the end, nobody achieves something, all by themselves. And you will need to find the people around you with complementary skills, with complementary strengths, complementary, challenges of themselves. And with that, I think, good self-knowledge and self-awareness also brings a sense of humility and the understanding that we need to work together, to collaborate in order to make things happen. Now more than ever. And sometimes, when we talk about collaboration, we think, yes, isn't that, the definition of organizations? We work together, we coordinate to make something possible. At the same time, I'm sure I'm not telling you something new, that we do not always necessarily work in a collaborative way. Sometimes we work at cross purposes. But in the time that we're living, with the challenges that we're facing, I think it's more important than ever to mobilize that sense of collaboration at all levels of the organization.
So you mentioned two important things. Number one, leadership, self-awareness, and number two, problems. And let me just pick up on this, which is, I think, we bring the two themes together in this conference, leadership and entrepreneurship. So we call this entrepreneurial leadership, and I think that entrepreneurial leadership is really central to what we're trying to accomplish at Iese, central to our mission, which is to have a deep and lasting and positive impact on people, companies, and society. And in terms of problems, we all know the world is full of problems. Very, very severe problems and existential ones. Wars, geopolitical tensions, extreme political ideologies on the rise, poverty, climate change. Those are hard problems. Those are what we refer to as the grand challenges of our time. And all of us also face their own set of challenges and personal issues in their lives, in their companies, in their jobs, in their families, in other activities. Now, interesting thing that entrepreneurship really teaches us is, I would say, can boil down to 4 tenets 4 principles of entrepreneurship that we also saw coming through very strongly in our program yesterday and expect them also to come through in our program today. Number 1 is that problems are also opportunities. So if you focus on problems as being problems only, this will not be the best mindset in order to address those problems. You should reframe those problems as opportunities. If you talk to entrepreneurs, they always start with a problem, but they don't consider it a problem in the negative sense. They are in fact delighted to be having a problem that they can solve. So this is kind of the mindset that we're talking about, whether you see the glass half full or half empty. Every half empty glass is half full. And you have the choice to see it whichever way you want to see it. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2, what came through and what is also what we learned from entrepreneurs, is don't give up. Don't throw in the towel in solving those problems and exploiting the opportunities too soon. Entrepreneurs teach us the value of resilience, of perseverance, of not giving up at the first sight of trouble. And there will be lots of people discouraging you along the way, lots of naysayers. Keep going because it's worthwhile. Number 3 is that entrepreneurship is a team sport. This is another big myth about entrepreneurship, the myth of the lone entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs never act alone. They always act in a team. We only see kind of, the big reports in the newspapers about these individuals because we like hero stories. But in the end, those are team accomplishments, good things, and this is good to know because as an entrepreneur, you can reach out to others. They will help you. Good things will come when you reach out for help with good intentions. And lastly, entrepreneurship is truly a process. It can be managed through behaviors, through skills, through things that can be learned and improved. It's not a genetic trait. You don't have to be Elon Musk, thank God. You don't have to be Amancio Ortega either. I mean, if you get there with this type of net worth, fantastic, but you don't have to be one of them. You can still be an entrepreneur, and I think that the 4 tenets of entrepreneurship really strongly suggest that entrepreneurship is not just for startup entrepreneurs. It is for everybody. It is, and that's why I'm very glad that we chose this as a theme for our conference.
So what I think though is that, all of that also requires a certain degree of courage. Because if you're actually gonna do this in practice, you have your vision, you're seeing your opportunities, you've worked it out for yourself, you want to know where you're heading. Not everybody else right away may see it in the same way. So you'll need to, mobilize the courage to, try out new behaviors, to maybe fail sometimes, even if you believe something, to overcome that, to develop, the resilience, to see, what is failing even, everything in the end, is a learning opportunity. So capture, the things that don't work right at the first time. So with that, every challenge is really an opportunity also to grow. And especially, we'll keep on coming back to that, but if you're doing that, as a team sport, in a collaborative way. What maybe I would want to say now, we're starting to bridging already a little bit, to our next element of the program, is that, the technological innovation that we're facing these days, maybe we find ourselves collaborating with unexpected partners, our technology, our AI, So that is also something that is going on for which, you need the courage to work it out. We'll talk much more about that in a little bit. And that obviously is something that also has shaped our programs here at Iese in the past years very much, and since ever, I think, because we always try to integrate whatever is out there, the newest technologies, the newest thinking about it, even if we don't necessarily know everything ourselves yet, but so that we equip, our graduates from the programs with the up-to-date knowledge that we'll need to function in this setting. Remote work is just one example also that, many people are talking about, many of us are making decisions on. We see many benefits. We may also still see some disadvantages. Research, also will help us for the long-term effects. So let's see with all of that and with all of those teams exactly in the world we are living today, I'm very, very excited about our program for today around this theme of elevated entrepreneurship.
Yes, and what is elevated entrepreneurship? You could say that elevated entrepreneurship, one interpretation is that it's entrepreneurship with a purpose. So I think the theme also invites all of us to ask ourselves what is the purpose in our entrepreneurial endeavors. As Anne-Loise mentioned, there are plenty of sessions that give us an opportunity to pause and reflect. And I invite you to explore this for yourself. What would this mean for you, elevated entrepreneurship? And I wish you a wonderful day full of inspiration, great insights, and meaningful interactions. Looking forward to it as well. Thank you very much. Thank you.
When the world around you is constantly changing, you need a team you know. When the expectations are overwhelming, you need support you can trust. When you have a problem, you need a partner you can rely on to solve it.
The Xerox 914
The most successful single product of all time.
For nearly 120 years, Xerox has been a trailblazer in the workplace, leading with responsibility, streamlining productivity, and innovating in technology. From digitizing documents to customized IT solutions and everything in between, Xerox solves problems with innovative and automated workflows so that you can focus on what truly matters. Workers are more stressed than ever, and we're here to help with sustainable, secure solutions, making the communities we serve better. Xerox works for everyone, everywhere. We work where you work. Building the future started yesterday and continues today. Because after all these years, we've always been here, doing what we do best.
Xerox 4000 turn out 45 copy. Altel, the world's first desktop computer. Xerox breakthroughs that simplify how work gets done.
Trailblazers don't wait for the future. They make it. We make work work.
So with that introduction of the movie, it's an absolute privilege and pleasure to introduce to you here today Steve Bandrozak, CEO of Xerox since August 2022. He was with Xerox before, since 2018. Before Xerox, a long career, covering many global companies and a very strong track record of leveraging digital platforms to transform global operations, drive market share, increase profitability. I think, in kicking off the theme of today of elevated entrepreneurship, driving in a world that is changing, where technologies are playing a big role. I couldn't think of a better person to have here on stage today. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Anne.
So, would you maybe tell us a little bit about your career so far?
Yeah, I have had an incredibly blessed career. I started my career in literally working multiple jobs. I have a family that disowned me at the age of 16, and I say that because it gave me a humble start and a humble beginning in working in heavy construction. I didn't get my 2-year degree until 4 years after I started working in operations. I started working in delis. I did everything I could to go and raise money to get me through school. Went through 2 years of night school, 4 years of getting my 2-year degree, ultimately getting my master's degree, and ultimately going and graduating from Columbia late in my career. But out of that time, you learn an awful lot about being thankful for your roots and your start. It created a grit. I worked in night shift operations, and from there I went and ultimately became one of the youngest CIOs for a company called Avnet very early in my career. At Avnet, we started about $300 million. I left, we were just over $30 billion. We had integrated one company per quarter for 10 years, and you kind of learn, how do you put companies together? How do you lead through change? How do you drive change? I had the privilege of being global CIO for companies like DHL. I did the IBM PC spin-out, was part of the team that built Lenovo. I was at HP, I was CIO, and I ran their shared services as well as their BPO function, and ultimately I ascended to the CEO of Xerox, and it's been a blessed career. And through that time, you learn an awful lot about driving change and leadership. So we'll have a great discussion.
So with that, by the way, let me tell you, I can imagine I see some of you even now already making notes. If you have a question, please put it in the app and it will come through the podium here. So later on in the session, we'll have time for that Q&A. So then that theme of change and leadership, can you share maybe a little bit of your past years at Xerox, your past 1.5 year as a CEO? What did you witness? What are the key challenges you're facing?
Yeah, it's like every leader, we have had incredible challenges. I joined in June of 2018, and if you follow the early part of what we were doing, we were running a project called Project Own It, what was really driving and getting the P&L ready for a large acquisition, which we were attempting to acquire Hewlett-Packard. You can follow that through the news. Our stock had ascended to $38 a share, which was over double from where we were, and then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, we literally lost $2 billion of top line overnight, dealing with obviously the same thing that everybody else was dealing with in terms of trying to keep your employees safe. Also, the ability to service our clients in an incredibly difficult world. Supply chain hit. Russia, Ukraine hit us. It was a very large revenue hit for us as well, culminating in last summer, a year from this previous summer, the loss of our CEO. So we had an incredibly difficult period of time. And so, how do you lead and how do you drive through that? One of the lessons learned, and I think you learn an awful lot about being a leader in the time of crisis, in the time of need of change. And you really find a lot about your team. You find a lot about yourself. You find out a lot about the skills that you need to go drive. And, when I took the job a year ago this past summer, the first thing I told the board was, we had to get the energy back in the company. We had to drive and get the company back to where it needs to be. Driving, getting back to the innovation, getting back to the we are Xerox and what it means to be a culture of being a Xerox. And so spent an awful lot of time with the team in the field. And that's where you really learn an awful lot about leadership and how good you are to try to get that turned around. And that first quarter for us was pretty rough. We had third quarter earnings a year ago. The first quarter, it was pretty rough. And then we had 3 quarters of growth, top line, bottom line, and you could see the momentum, you could see the change, and we can talk about how you drive through that. But it really was about one-on-one leadership, right? Spending time in the field with the teams, leading through example, not being and not showing any fear, driving energy in the company, showing passion and really the empathetic aspect of understanding what employees have gone through over the past 30 months, and it's made a huge difference, and we've had a big turnaround.
So can you show some? Because I think this is a fantastic topic, and I know from credible sources, that people around to describe you as a very humble person who is great at building the senior team, at driving the organization or the organizational culture, at igniting that energy. Do you have some examples that stand out? Because driving energy, not showing fear in a time where you may very well be feeling some fear, in the world as it is. Do you have some memorable moments in mind where that you feel made a difference in how you could do that? That may be interesting for all of us here.
Yeah, it's hard when you're building teams. We tend to measure people based on their functional capabilities. And I think the highest performing teams are teams that you build that have the attribute of great leadership. I say it all the time. I'd rather have a team of what we call B players, individuals that are committed and trusted and work together than individual A players. That'll never be a team. And so the ability to be able to build a team that trusts each other, the ability to build a team that works and is decisive in their decision making. You can't drive change fast with an organization that doesn't trust each other. It's really difficult. And so how do you build an organization and a team and a leadership team that has those qualities? Number one, that's how you hire and that's how you build your teams. Two, you build your team with the ability and making sure that you've got individuals that absolutely trust each other. my philosophy is to be completely transparent in what we're doing. And so the reality of the things that we're up against, the reality of where we are in the industry, the reality of where we are when COVID hit, getting the leadership team together, being open, being honest, being fully transparent. I mean, fully transparent on where you are, and then getting anybody's input, and then are you buying into it? You know, when we hit a year ago, last year, I brought the team offsite, and I really looked at everybody and said, are you in for this journey? This is what we're about ready to go through. Are you in? And it's okay. Not everybody is made for certain times. You know, I'm an incredible transformation leader, meaning I love change, I love to drive change. And I said when I was hired at Xerox, if it ever becomes steady state, this is not my company. And it's the same thing with everything I've done. And by the way, it's just the opposite. There are individuals who love to drive steady state companies who don't like to drive change and transformation. And that's okay. But build a team with the dynamics of individuals that trust each other, individuals that have speed, decisiveness, and get you through. You know, I say it all the time. Today is the slowest change will ever be in our life. Technology is driving change at a rate and pace that we've ever seen before. And if you don't realize and recognize that, think about AI that's coming our way, ChatGPT, what's happening with robotics process automation, what's happening with culture change inside of our environments. And so we have to be able to lead through those change. And it takes certain attributes. And it starts with trust. It starts with a team that will work together decisively. You know, we don't know what we're going to be up against tomorrow. But I know we're ready for it because we have a team that has the attributes that can lead through those changes.
Yeah, think about it. Today is the slowest change that we will witness, and the implication that has. And you're doing this yourself, and you're also, helping the world, obviously, with your technologies. So I like and I appreciate very much, how you talk to the role of the trust in the team, getting people ready. Could you share even a bit more, because as a CEO, there's many things you can do with people around you, but then with all the people you have around you, it's not only about what you do personally, but how you build the systems so that you mentioned the word energy. So you are a battery of energy, but I imagine that you also need to build many batteries of energy in the organization. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, I've got a saying: you either drive energy or suck energy in the company. And if you're sitting on the fence and you're not driving energy, you're sucking energy. And I give that to all my leadership, not only my direct reports, but we have a senior leadership team, which is the top 100 leaders in the company, and we send the same message. But it's also around showing up in the field with your employees, whether it's factories, whether it's field services. I go on and I do ride-alongs with the technicians in the field to see what they're doing, understanding, spend time in the factories. I go on, and I'm on a tour right now and visiting. This is my 4th country this week, spending time with employees, spending time with clients, really listening and letting them hear from me where we are. Open, honest, transparency. Where are we? Where are we in the quarter? Where are we in our 3-year journey of our aspirational goals? Where are we on innovation? Really talking and transparency, sharing. And I think that openness and being authentic around what it is, and I get at, my team is constantly challenged. Steve, are we too transparent? Is that too much? And I always will err on the side of being as transparent as we can with the team. And the team senses it. The field workers, everybody senses it. The other thing is, and hopefully, I can inspire people. I spend time literally listening one-on-one. Doesn't matter where you are in the organization. Just listen, look somebody in the eye and just listen. Sit down with round tables. I lead what we call the YP group. We have 10 employee resource groups. One is called Young Professionals. And I sit with them every month, listening to what our young professionals are doing, what they're saying, mentoring, teaching. I sit down with our employee resource groups, listening, hearing what's important. Every single diverse group, whether it's around our Women Alliance, whether it's around our Black leadership, whether it's around our Asian leadership, everybody has a different, unique challenge. And you've got to be able to listen. You've got to be able to understand their needs and build a culture of empathy, build a culture of energy. And it's important. When everybody buys into that culture, I say it all the time, culture will kill strategy all the time. If you don't have the right culture with the right people and the right energy to drive and lead through change, especially as fast as we need to go, it'll kill strategy all the time, right? And so I am a strong believer in spending time in the field, building that culture, cultivating it. I want to be the chief talent officer, right? The individual that can help and build and mentor and make somebody's day better each and every day.
So that sounds like you're very much a role model for others, and you want others again to be role models for others in the organization. And I was just triggered by saying you're talking to young professionals. We all care a lot, about the new generations. They come with many, skills and good mindsets, especially if we're talking about digital innovation. But I imagine you have many generations in the company. So how do you see the interactions between the different generations, the diversity that you have on that front in relation to the change readiness of the organization?
Yeah, it's a big challenge for a company that's been around for a long time, celebrating individuals that have been with us 30, 40, 50 years. I look every month, we have a scroller on our internal website about the number of employees that have been with us 50 years and 40 years and 30 years. And it's not one a month, right? It's 10 a month. I mean, it's significant, the number of employees that have been with us for a long time. And celebrating that history, that richness of their knowledge, as well as early career employees and young generation. And it's fun and it's challenging today because every age demographic has a different set of needs, has a different set of whys and a different set of purpose. And so you've got to be able to not only make sure you understand all the different demographics, but how do you build a culture that embraces it all, right? How do you make sure that you have young mentorship of your early career employees and then reverse mentors, right? It's one of the things that I think is really important for us as senior leaders. How do you get reverse mentors? How do you get early career employees that mentor you? And the first time you have a reverse mentor, they're like, you're the CEO, what can I teach you, right? And I remember the first time somebody was telling me about TikTok, and I'm like, okay, Google, what the heck is TikTok, right? You try to learn what and the way early career employees communicate. By the way, kids who are in grade school today are totally different than millennials who used to think of the young generation. Millennials are running our company, and they've got a totally different set of needs and purpose than employees that are going to come from us out of middle school and out of grade school tomorrow. And so you've got to be able to understand those dynamics. How do you recruit? How do you retain? How do you motivate, by the way? The way that you motivate today, early career, is somebody different than how do you motivate somebody late in their career. And so the importance of listening, the importance of making sure that you build a culture that is diverse, that is inclusion, that has belonging. One of the things that Xerox is so proud of is an incredible history of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And it's what we live. It's important. We always talk about it all the time. The differences make us stronger. We don't shy away from any issue of the day. We don't shy away from how do you make ourselves stronger by our differences, right? And really embracing that. And that includes age differences, gender differences, right? Whether it's ethnic differences. And it's really important today in the world in which we live, in the geopolitical world with all the challenges that come at you overnight. How do you deal with those things? How do you build a culture that embraces that it's okay, we're a community? And every day, by the way, we want to make our communities around us better. How do we give back to our communities? When you can create that purpose and you create that type of inclusion, you have an unbelievable workforce that wants to drive and wants to lead to the next generation.
Yeah, I think we know this, from what young people want from their work, that exactly that sense of purpose, that connection that they feel to something bigger, the impact that they're making is very important to them. At the same time, we also know, from our youngsters that sometimes they may get a bit restless, they want to, get ahead faster than maybe our organizational structures allow. You mentioned earlier there's difference in motivating people from different generations. Can you talk maybe a little bit, especially also because you're doing a lot of mentoring, you're teaching digital leadership at Columbia Business School, so you have a lot of exposure and you seek a lot of interaction and inspiration from exactly this generation as well. Can you talk a little bit to?
Yeah, I think the first thing is listening. One of the reasons why I lead the Young Professionals group and executive sponsor of that group is listening. And it's like nails on a blackboard, by the way. When you spend time with them, it's like nails on a blackboard. Their ideas, when you first hear them, it's like, okay, just nails on a blackboard. But then you listen, and then you realize the energy, the excitement, the innovation that they bring, and you're like, why not? Let's go try it. How do you make them innovative? And right now, they're actually working on what is the next generation of work? What does the new work look like, right? And they're bringing those ideas and that innovation to us, which is incredibly powerful. But as you listen to and you do and you mentor, you learn an awful lot. Not only about what individuals want, you learn an awful lot about yourself. How do you lead these individuals, and how do you set up an environment in which these individuals will come and they will thrive and they will grow inside of the organization? And so it's so important that you listen. That's why I love reverse mentorship. I love teaching because I hear from students around topics. One of the things when I teach, and I always open up with a use case of something that I've actually been a part of, right? And so I create a group and I say, how do you lead through a ransomware attack? And then the first thing is, you get answers that come back about what you would do around a ransomware attack day one. 2 o'clock in the morning, you got a ransomware attack, what would you do? And you get tons of feedback very, very quickly. I disclosed it to the EU, we disclosed it to California, we disclosed it to Iese5, and I said, okay, fine. You had one HR record that you lost. 24 hours later, you find out your finance system has been hit. Did you lie? Were you too fast? Were you too slow? And all of a sudden they start to step back. Okay, we want to give you a different answer. And then you walk through the process, and then you take them to the end of that process a month later of what actually happened, and you can see their development of understanding. How do you lead through fog? How do you lead through not having all the answers? And when you think you have a very specific reason for an answer, there are 14 other factors you may not have thought about, right? And so as we take them through that, you can see their reaction, you can see their understanding to how do you lead through these types of things, right? But I learned as well. I learned from the first reaction, it is very, very, it's my data, there was a ransomware attack, we should be able to disclose it. Okay, fine. And then we take them through, and you take them through the process, and they learn through that process, right? But it's important that you learn what they're thinking. You learn what's on their mind. You learn what's important. We talk about climate change, and we talk about what's happening with artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. And every workforce, every company, every government has a different opinion and has a different view on it, right? And so how do you get that 360 understanding from your workforce of how do you drive it and use that technology and drive excitement in that technology and drive the fear out of the company?
Yeah, so that sounds like you really want to expose them to the complexity of the world as early as possible.
For sure.
For sure, to get them into the habit of listening, understanding the playing field to different stakeholders. So what also fascinates me, and I would be really interested to hearing your take on this, because if today is the slowest speed that we will witness, and thinking about what that implies for our organization, the challenges that that we're faced, and we're running, but at some point we all know at the individual level, but also for our teams and for organization, we need time for recovery, for regenerating. How do you balance that out, that need for speed, and in order to maintain that speed and that fitness as a company, the need for recovery? How do you see that in Xerox?
Yeah, first of all, one of the things that's really important, I think, for everybody in this group, the ability to drive through change and lead through change is going to be a timeless set of skills, whether it's technology change, whether it's cultural change, environment change, you pick it. And it's only going to get faster, right? How do we react to AI? How do we react to ChatGPT, these technologies that are coming at us, the geopolitical challenges that are coming at us, the climate challenges that are coming at us at a rate and pace that we've never seen before, right? So the first thing is really important is how do you lead and how do you have the skills and the attributes to drive through change leadership, right? You talked about being fearless early when you talk about entrepreneur and leadership. How do you drive it? How do you motivate? How do you create that vision? How do you create an environment and a culture that can adapt to change? One of the things that I have always think about all the time is, are we going fast enough? When COVID first hit, it was interesting. Before COVID, anybody was trying to drive video technology or reduce travel through, more meetings with Zoom and Teams. It was going extremely slow. COVID hit, and all of a sudden the world changed. And in 2 weeks, we went from 1 million viewers to 10 million to the amount of people that are using technology today, like this conference, in terms of using video. And it was happened overnight. And by the way, we adopted overnight. We absorbed it overnight. We did it quickly. So it really keeps me thinking about how fast can we actually drive these organizations, right? And I talk about the consumer today. your own mobile device and the applications that we have and the applications that our employees have, they can absorb change faster than we give them credit for. Overnight, think about your mobile phone and all of a sudden the iOS changes. It changes overnight. You adapt, you find a way of doing it, and yet we are very, very slow within enterprise in general. And so the first thing is, how do you drive through that change with speed? How do you drive through that change with having change leadership that can adapt to no matter what happens in the company today? Around how do you get your energy back, you got to find your way, right? When you come to the office, everybody's looking for you to drive energy, right? So you got to find your way, whether it's on weekends, whether it's I get up 4 o'clock in the morning every day, I try to hit the gym or I try to do something to get my energy ready. So when I hit the office, everybody realizes and knows that I'm ready to go. When I get home, my Myers-Briggs, I am an off-the-chart introvert. This is not natural for me. I don't enjoy being around large people, but I've done it my entire career. And so when I get home, the first thing my wife says, where is that personality that everybody sees in the public eye, right? Because I'm trying to get my energy back, trying to re-energize, right? So you got to find your way of energizing, whether it's, it's exercising, reading, whatever it may be, yoga, meditation, it doesn't really matter. Find a way of getting your energy back because your company, the people around you, need that energy from you every day.
Yeah, and I can see especially, for an established company, in a field where your competition may come, I imagine, from small, garage type companies. So you need to be able, and you're, with the big organization, with all the advantages that has, but also, with the speeds that you need to get, not, from 4 people around you in a garage, but from a whole organization.
It's funny because one of the biggest things, my competition today is not who you would traditionally think about in our industry. My competition is some VC startup that I don't know what the technology is that's going to disrupt me. And it's everybody in this room, right? It's not going to be your traditional competitors. It's going to be technology or innovation that comes at us that we didn't even know was coming. And everybody asks me, Steve, what's the great technology of 3 years from now? I can't tell you, but I can tell you Xerox will be a technology leader, will be ready, right? I've got things that we know are coming in and around security, in and around apps at the edge, what's happening with ChatGPT and the advancements of that. So we see that, especially as we spend time with Palo Alto Research and they do exhaustive research in these new technologies. I see it, but the thing you can never predict is when is it going to be adopted. AI has been around a long time. It's been around a long time. Why the hype over the last year? Well, the reality of the speed of the chip, the speed of networks, the ability to be able to drive massive amounts of data and get fast results because of the speed of the chip, which changed, as well as the adoption and the absorption of AI in our businesses. That's what's accelerated. And it's the same thing with all technology, whether it's augmented reality, whether it's virtual reality, what we're going to see with ChatGPT. It's going to be how fast do we adopt it and how fast do we absorb it. The reality is it's not about enterprise absorbing it, it's about consumers absorbing it, right? So if you want to see what's leading, what's going to drive next generation technology, just look at consumers. Look at what's happening around your families. Look at what's happening around universities. Look at what's happening around younger generation in terms of how they're using it, how fast they're adopting it. I tell my team all the time, I want every client experience to be the same in us inside of our company as it is when we're home in the consumer app. You think about Amazon. There's no help desk for Amazon. They don't ask for change. They just change it, and yet we continue to absorb and use that technology. And so the reality is the consumer applications are driving expectations of our consumers, of our employees, of our partners, and candidly, it's driving technology around the world. Big change from when I started as a CIO 20 years ago, where the CIOs drove technology from the innovation standpoint from companies. We're seeing just the opposite. You're seeing the consumer world and the entrepreneur aspect of adoption and driving of technology in the consumer space that's driving adoption.
Yeah, so I imagine your cycles of new products development and innovation have shortened
for sure.
Quite a bit, I imagine.
It is.
Yeah.
We look at my world. We're looking at a cycle time of 3 to 5 years, right? From engineering to full production to end of life. You take a look at software today. 6 months is a long time.
Yeah.
You take a look at Amazon today, they have thousands of changes per day in their infrastructure, per day. And so, you think about that type of change, that swiftness of change, and then you look inside your own enterprise. Are you ready for that? Right? The way that you stabilize an enterprise, you don't drive change. It's just completely opposite of what we need to do to be successful to drive technology inside of our companies.
So I think I'm seeing quite a few questions coming in based on maybe your earlier comment, of energizing and also energizing yourself. And I see even more, now that you're sharing even more about the speed, the complexity, customer centricity. So here, for example, Mohammed is asking, how do you you started alluding to it, but how do you take care of yourself so that you can sustain taking care of the many responsibilities? You alluded to it already, but I think it's something that many of us, can relate to. There's many things we have to do. Things are going really fast. So any more pieces of advice there?
I think, look, one of the things about this job, and I'm sure many of you sit here, is it's not about work for me. I enjoy what I do, and so there's always a saying: work in places and do jobs that you enjoy. It doesn't feel like work, right? So for me, when I'm here, I get energized by spending time in audiences like this, spending time with my family, spending time with the teams and the environments that I'm in at work, and spending time with charitable and give back. And so for me, I get energy out of that and I absorb that. The one thing that I have to do, you got to be physically ready, right? You got to be mentally ready. So what are those things that you need to do? For me, it's the ability to be able to work out early, to be able to get my mind ready, get my body ready, get my health, and keep myself physically in shape. But everybody is different. Some people like to meditate. Some people like to, read books. Whatever that is, spend the time for yourself and do that. Get yourself ready. Because your employees, your culture, your enterprise is looking for you to be that leader, to be that energy, and be that leader. You got to find a way to get yourself energized and be ready to come to the office every day.
Yeah, so it's like the emergency procedure in the airplanes. Make sure you put up your own
the
oxygen mask before, being able to help others. Yeah. So you have to find what your oxygen is.
You do.
And then be disciplined.
You do.
In
and look, there's no one formula. And people ask me all the time, you're up at 4, what time you go to sleep? And between 11 and 12, and so I'm averaging 4 to 5 hours of sleep. And every year I do my executive review, and they tell me the same thing: you need more sleep, and you need more. It's just who we are. You're built in the way you're wired, and so whatever it is personally that gets you ready to be the best of you every day, you got to spend time doing it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So other questions I see are coming in. I think because you mentioned about organizational culture, the investment, the importance of having a strong culture, change-ready culture. So here there's a few questions asking, for example, by Enrico, who says, okay, what are the key elements to secure that the companies you acquire get the Xerox culture and become truly integrated? I know also this is even before coming to Xerox, I guess you've worked quite a bit on integrating cultures.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, best practices?
There's a couple of things, and I think, companies have the ability to acquire another company and just absolutely kill what made that company great before you acquire it. And so you really need to spend time in understanding what are their attributes. What do you acquire a company for? Did you acquire a company for sales, for product, for geography? What was the actual reason behind acquiring that organization? And then making sure that you preserve it. We acquired a company called Go Inspire in the UK, really driving what we call CES, and it's really around marketing and artificial intelligence and driving from campaign to closed campaign, closed loop, all around electronic marketing, driving demands, driving campaigns. That's a totally different culture than bringing it into the traditional Xerox world, right? So how do you preserve the best of that and yet use the Xerox world as a great go-to-market, as a great innovation, building scale? And it's really important that you put those two companies together and you preserve that culture. And it's around making sure that you spend time in that culture. Do an acquisition, you go and spend time with the team, understand what made that company great, understand their values, their attributes, and then try to preserve that as best as you can, as well as what are the things that Xerox brings to that culture. We talk about diversity and inclusion. We talk about the culture of being resilient, all the innovation, the things that we've done, the history of innovation, going back to Park and what we've done to change the world and society in itself and the contribution that we've made to society, right? So how do you make sure that you put those two together so that when you come out of it, it's 1 and 1 equals 3? It takes time, but more importantly, it takes focus and it takes listening, right? I constantly listen to the team and go inspire. How are we doing? What are we doing? Are you driving change? And just giving them the opportunity to help drive change inside the company, right? Putting teams together, right? Doing prototypes of the two companies together to drive new business models. But more important, pay attention. Don't just integrate it and leave it, pay attention. It's not just the first year, it's not just the second year. It's did we have the culture, did we have the results that we wanted? You know, many times we integrate companies and we just look at the financials. Did we get the return on investment? Did we get the cost out, the revenue up, whatever those things are? And before you know it, you lost track of the company that you bought. It doesn't exist anymore, right? And so you really need to pay attention and spend time with the team that you acquired, as well as the teams that work out of the acquired acquisition.
Very interesting. I think that mirrors almost what you were telling us earlier about how you work with the senior leadership team. Listen to people, understand them, try to bring out the best, respect people for whatever strength it is that they're bringing, and to do that both at the personal level and then also at the level of the organizational culture.
One of the things I do is when we spend time, and I went to go see Go Inspire when we first acquired them, and I spent time with the team, and I said, please don't let us kill what makes you great. Let me know.
Yeah.
Please tell me.
Yeah.
Okay, and giving them permission to come back. Simple things around what's the logo, what's the brand. They're so proud of that Go Inspire brand, and yet we know Xerox is a bigger brand with a bigger global reach, so immediately you want to just put Xerox on top of everything. Well, they're proud of that brand. They built it. They built this incredible company from nothing to where it is today. So how do you preserve that? How do you make sure that those two worlds come together? It's all too easy to say your chief marketing officer is going to be, you know what, you're just going to drive Xerox down their throat, and they're going to be a Xerox company. Well, you lose what made them great, right? So we got to figure out how do we have that right balance.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I guess then here, so people are also wondering a little bit about the other side of the coin. So this is someone speaking from experience saying, hey, in my company, sometimes people are resistant to change.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this is not the only one company or the only one employee, where that is. So despite, your good intentions, despite listening, despite respect, what if, for whatever reason, you're sensing resistance to change? Any experiences you can share there?
Look, change is like communications. When somebody doesn't understand you can yell louder, you can talk harder, you can say the same thing, or you can sit back and say, it's your fault, you don't understand, or you can find a different way of communicating. If I was part of the team that did the IBM PC spin-out and build Lenovo, going into Beijing and working in China for a Chinese-based company has a different culture. So when I get there as an American, as a U.S. company, and you try to take your values, you try to communicate the way that you do, they don't understand. It's your fault, not theirs. And it's the same thing with change. If you can't get people to change, what are the things that you need to do? Now there comes a point where people just will not change, and then you got to make organization changes and people changes. That happens. But in general, everybody wants to be successful. Nobody comes to work every day and say, I want to not be successful. I want this thing to be miserable and fail, all right? They're scared. They're nervous. They don't know what their role is. They don't know what they play. They don't know how they fit into this thing. And they're scared. We were at a law firm a couple of days ago, and we were talking with the head of the law firms, talking about ChatGPT and AI. They know they need to deal with it, and one of the head of the legal team said, can ChatGPT actually write an opinion? And really what he was asking me is, will my job survive 3 years from now? And we talked through it, like, no, this is an evolution. Let me tell you where you can bring value, right? So as opposed to being scared and that fear, we talked about how do you start a prototype with AI. Xerox will help you in starting with robotics process automation, AI, in a very, very small prototype so you can see it, see how it works. Start to roll out. We started RPA and AI 3 years ago. We're now up to, we had 0 transactions, 7 million transactions per quarter. Every one of my functions, and the fastest function that's absorbing technology is my finance team. And 3 years ago, you would have said, no way would your finance team be the biggest change agent inside your company. They saw the value. They weren't scared of it. They started to see how it can make lives better, how it can do things faster, how we can drive faster results and processes. So sometimes when people are resistant to change, bring them in, make them a part of what you're going to try to do. Get them over that fear. Get them over that boogeyman approach. You know, everybody, think about rumors today. We talk about geopolitical, right? Everybody always goes to the dark side every day. I know you got elections here and you have some interesting things going on, but everybody goes to the dark side overnight. We never think about the positive side, and that's what we need to do from a leader's standpoint. AI, change can be positive. What's the positive aspect of the change? It's your vision, right? If you ever run a marathon, when you run a marathon, it's not about running a marathon. The marathon is the end result of all the training and all the great things that you did. All those hard days, all those nights, hot days you're running, long runs, times on the weekend away from your family. Running the marathon is anticlimactic. And it's the same thing with change. Make sure everybody understands where you're going. What's the vision? Why do we need to get there? Is there an existential threat of not changing? Of not absorbing AI, not absorbing ChatGPT, not absorbing all the things that we have to deal with? If we don't do it, either our competitors or a startup are going to do it and disrupt us, so we better do it to ourselves. The ability to be able to communicate that is so important.
So I'm getting here many questions, starting with thank you for your inspiration. I think there's, many people, and also still some ongoing questions on how you prioritize, how you manage to sustain your energy. But maybe my question, getting to the end of the panel, is maybe on developing leaders in the organization. It's again, just to make the battery to say, okay, you're doing everything you can to maintain your own energy, but you want to build batteries of energy in the organization. How?
It's I kid a little bit, called my chief talent officer, right? But I really mean it. One of the jobs as a leader is to develop talent. Is the ability to be able to develop talent, find talent, bring talent in, and mentor. And so I have always had great leadership who've helped me mentor, and I would love to mentor. It's just something I enjoy doing, spending time doing. And it's one of the greatest things and greatest gifts you can do as a leader. Develop people, how to make people better. And mentorship is the greatest gift to yourself. Why do I say that? Because you learn an awful lot about what you know, what your superpower is, but you also learn a lot about what you don't know, what's your kryptonite, right? And so developing leaders, spending time. It's easy to tell people you're doing a great job. Difficult to tell people everything you've done the last 30 years, fantastic, great, but you're not good enough for tomorrow until you do these things. That's a hard conversation. It's really hard to tell a leader who is functionally doing superior work, but they don't have the right attitude. They don't have the right leadership skills to drive change. They don't have the right leadership team to bring in early career employees. They don't have the right leadership team to drive a culture of change. And you can see it, you can hear it. Do they inspire? Everybody who's sitting in the room, how many times a week, and I mean a week, does somebody say, you inspire me? Because if somebody hasn't told you that, you're not inspiring. You're not. The greatest gift I get is when somebody says to me, Steve, I don't want to let you down. Or you inspire me. Then I know I'm doing my job. Okay? And it's because you take time, you care. Every person in your organization. We got early career. We sit down every place I go, every country. I sit down with the top talent of the country. And I spend time with them. We talk about leadership. We talk about skills. We talk about what it takes to develop a career. We talk about the difficult conversations of how you deal with difficult situations, right? And so as a leader, for me, the more I can create 20,000 plus leaders within my company, the easier my job becomes, right? And so, yes, do I have to look at the CEO role of all the things that we need to do? But one of the biggest things I can ever do is to create leaders. There's a ton of books out there that talk about leaders create leaders. And if you keep that in the front and center and think about that every day, and you come to work that way, and every interaction, whether it's somebody at the coffee machine, it doesn't matter where it is, spend time. Encourage. Give them it's okay. We talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about innovation. The difference between ideas and innovation. Ideas, no action. Innovation, we've done something about it. We don't care about the fear. We don't worry about the repercussions. We don't worry about making mistakes. And if you don't have a culture that is acceptance of failure, fail fast, but you have to have a culture that's acceptance of failure. And it's really hard for mature companies. We try to build every process that puts bumpers and puts these little swimmies on everybody so they can't fail. Well, if you don't take your swimmies off, you're never going to know whether you can swim or not. How are you going to know if you swim if you always got a life preserver around you? It's okay. It's okay to fail. Give people an opportunity to fail. Celebrate failure. Celebrate it fast. And then make sure you move on. Don't make the same mistakes multiple times, but it's okay to fail. And when you create that culture and environment, you'll create an environment of innovation and environment of change.
Well, there is still a long list of questions here, but I honestly couldn't think of a better conclusion than I think, what we've heard, through so generously sharing your experience is really, in all of our field talking about digitalization, AI, new technology, speed. But I think the image that I got, is of it's very much about the humans that are driving the innovation and how can you connect to people at a human level. You spoke, about creating trust, as, the base, getting a strong team rather than a collection of strong team players. So I think, with that, the role of listening, the role of taking care of yourself to drive that energy in the long term. So really, thank you so much for sharing so generously about your experience.
Thank you very much. My honor. Pleasure.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Everyone, Zing, you want to have a seat? I'll go ahead and get started. We're from Singapore. I want to say hello, good morning, hola. And we're from Singapore, and I wanted to share with you this morning a little bit about what we do in Singapore and in Asia on the entrepreneurship ecosystem, consistent to the theme here on elevated entrepreneurship. Okay, I got lots to talk about today. This is just a very quick intro of me. Basically, I work and teach and mentor entrepreneurs in Singapore. I specialize in technology, commercialization, and I've been involved in entrepreneurship in Singapore since 1995. So that was a long time ago. Okay. What I'd like to do, I have a lot to cover today, and not to worry, this is not a lecture. Nobody comes here for a lecture, but I want to share with you some information, and there's a lot of content to push out, so I'm going to put this in a little bit more structured format. But I also included a wonderful guest speaker with me, Iese5, who's going to be talking about her experience at Cargill, based in Singapore. So when you think about entrepreneurship and innovation, you always think about Silicon Valley. And I do this because I want to contrast with what's going on in Asia. And you think of Silicon Valley, you may not know that the whole entrepreneurship ecosystem started out actually as from the Stanford Research Lab, okay, as a basis for looking at electronic warfare. And so out of that sort of heritage, you have this sort of ecosystem in Silicon Valley that's built up around radical innovation, breakthrough technology, and looking at a huge problem. Okay. And what I want to do is contrast that to Asia. I want to share with you how entrepreneurship and innovation starts off in Asia, because all of us have sort of a different cultural, historical, political context by which innovation works. Okay. So I'm going to start off with talking about Japan, Korea, Taiwan, but I also will talk about China in particular. I think you can't talk about Asia without talking about China. I know I'm going a little fast, but it's okay. You'll get I think there's going to be a soft copy of this content so you can absorb it at a better pace. So let's talk about China. So I did some work with looking at innovations from China, and China really is focused on pragmatic innovations. Started out to be imitation to fast innovation. When we think of China, in the old days, they had the 4 great inventions. Okay? But since the recent opening of China 2 or 3 decades ago, China started out with innovation in recent years from copying what we are being used to, okay, in sort of the more developed countries. So I included some, humorous photographs for you to take a look at what was going on in China up until about a decade ago. All right. So these photos and the research, all that was done around 2005, 2006, 2007. And it's come a long way since then, in about a decade and a half. So in China, they have this thing called shanzai, which means literally mountain shack, okay, bandits. So they go and, take technologies and brands from outside China and just copy it. Now, you'll see from some of these names that they use, they don't take themselves too seriously either, okay? So it's, they're not trying to say, we do a better job with, Adidas than Adidas. So they don't take themselves too seriously. And in fact, it started out with the microphone, the mobile phone industry. So this is a funny one, right? You see a cigar phone or a cigarette phone, okay? So that's what they've been doing. And so I'm just flashing through some photographs that I've taken around 2007. So it's quite interesting how they really view this whole, how do you get started in innovation? It's all from imitation, okay? And what's interesting is that it works very fast, all right? So what started out to be a Shanzai ecosystem, and this is the first I'm going to introduce this concept of an ecosystem as being centrally important to building entrepreneurship and innovation. Without an ecosystem, you cannot have individual entrepreneurs thrive or be successful. Okay? So in the Chinese ecosystem, what started out was a turnkey platform that allowed individual entrepreneurs to really put a mobile phone together very quickly. And that's exactly what happened. So it moved from a vertically integrated mobile phone industry to one where anybody can build a mobile phone. And that's why you have this incredible Shanzai mobile phone industry, like the Shanzai 1.0. Okay? And what's interesting was that this created an ecosystem where you have a lot of fast feedback from the customer to the trader to the manufacturer. What you think of as a product release cycle of something like a year to switch over to a new mobile phone hardware, the Chinese manufacturers can do this within a week or 2 weeks to really release a new mobile phone release. Okay. Now, then what happened was Shanzai 2.0 occurred. And what is that? That is when they figured out how to take a genuine product, such as an Apple iPod, okay, or an Apple iPod Touch, enhance it by giving it a cover, we call it an Apple peel. They jailbreak it and included some other components, and you can transform an iPod Touch to an iPhone 4 for less than half the price. And so that started China into an ecosystem of building on top of legitimate products, doing product extensions. All right? So out came a whole bunch of these companies that did extension products. Okay. And now it starts. You've heard of Xiaomi. How many of you heard of Xiaomi? Right?
It's a major mobile phone manufacturer from China, very successful. But you may not know that Xiaomi started out being a Shanghai company. In fact, their first product was actually software. They created a layer of software that allowed your Android phone to behave like an iPhone. And then they switched into doing hardware. And their first product was the Redmi, which sold out in 4.5 seconds. Okay. So this is a picture I picked up a long time ago when the CEO Lei Jun was just starting out with Xiaomi to release the first set of mobile phones that he manufactured. Okay. And you can see that to the point of even the launch of the product, wearing the black top and the blue jeans and the way to launch the mobile phone was actually taking after the Apple Steve Jobs program. Okay, so quite interesting. And today, of course, Xiaomi is a very, very successful smartphone manufacturer, branching off into many smart home devices. What's my point here? My point is that even from the fast copying imitation, you can actually build up a different kind of ecosystem as one that's based on bench science, R&D. All right? And that works for China. So now I've also talked about the Asian ecosystem. All right? So I want to switch and talk about Singapore. I don't know if you know much about Singapore, but it's a very, very small country. All right? It's a very small country. We don't have many resources. Okay? We don't really grow our food. The only thing we have is just people talent. All right? And in fact, how we started out in the ecosystem is that we started out being basically a place for multinationals to set up a regional headquarters in Southeast Asia. In the old days, the headquarters in Asia would be in Japan or Hong Kong. Singapore is sort of another place to set up what we call a regional headquarters for Southeast Asia. Okay. Why? Because Singapore, we have manpower, talent, we speak English, we follow the rules, we're law-abiding. So a lot of multinationals like to set up in Singapore. So as a consequence of that, our economic development was around building the infrastructure to support the MNCs, the multinationals, from setting up in Singapore. Now, here's something that interesting happened. Then, some of these talent from the IBMs, the HPs, who set up in Singapore, not everybody can rise to the top in the organization. All right? And so some of these talent who did not rise to the top for whatever reason they left and started their own companies in Singapore. And so that started out to be sort of an ad hoc ecosystem of entrepreneurs, technology-based entrepreneurs, who mainly started companies around IT solutions integration and of supporting the multinationals. And it's not until around the mid-90s that the government started becoming much, much more serious about what is this entrepreneurship ecosystem, how do we nurture and build it. And so around that time, we started doing the start of venture capital, government incentive, various boot camps, fund of funds, and we started to look at how to scale up this ecosystem. Okay? So I'm here to also share with you, where are we today? And how do you look at this ecosystem? And as you think about entrepreneurship and innovation in your context, be it a company, be it that you are an individual within a larger context, how does that work? What kind of ecosystem support do you need? Okay? And how do you sort of categorize and look at what is it that will make you successful as an entrepreneur? Or what is it that will make you successful as a company who want to nurture internal innovations? And so that would be the rest of what I will talk about. Okay. And so, as with everything in Singapore,
our government is very proactive, and we listen to the government. And so Singapore has an extensive ecosystem support. We have tax incentives, we have Startup Singapore, tax reliefs, all kinds of grants. In fact, in Singapore, we have this probably unique term. We call it grantopreneur. What that means is we actually have entrepreneurs who will start a company around a particular theme because the government is giving you a grant for doing that. Okay, so that's unique to Singapore. We have many government agencies involved in entrepreneurship and innovation support. In fact, that's actually quite successful. And this is probably an interesting pie chart for you to look at. I think earlier the Xerox CEO spoke about the consumers being very advanced in innovation, in adoption. And similarly, in Singapore, the first crop of startups that have been very successful have been targeted towards consumer digital. Okay? And in fact, the vast majority of the startups are in the sector of consumer digital, followed by enterprise, B2B types of startup, and fintech is also very much a healthy sector. And so this is probably an interesting chart for you to look at in terms of what's been going on in Singapore. And this is some of the startups that we have in Singapore. You may not know their names. Grab is the equivalent of Uber. And Secret Lab, imagine that you can create a multi-billion-dollar company making chairs for gamers. That's what this is. Okay. So there's a very interesting startup ecosystem going on there. We have what we call the world's most tightly packed entrepreneurial ecosystem. We have over 1,000 startups, accelerators, and venture capitalists concentrated in a very small area. Okay. We've been actually doing quite okay. I just picked up this graph from Visual Capitalist. It's based on the 2023 Global Innovation Index, all right, published, showing that Singapore is the first in innovation in Asia. So if you're interested, you can take a look at the Visual Capitalist. So we've been doing okay in terms of innovation, and we hope to continue doing that, encouraging entrepreneurship. So now before I will pass on the time to my co-speaker, I want to give you some context on how to look at an ecosystem. All right. It turns out if you look at the Singapore way of looking at an ecosystem, it's probably no different than how most ecosystems start off, which is you start off by being an opportunist. Okay. So it turns out I went and did a search, and no one's really come up with a model of how you look at ecosystem and how to categorize it. So what I did was I took Robert Wolkoff's work on corporate innovation and adapted it. So if you look at the x-axis, you'll see this is an ecosystem where who owns the equity or the proportion of the equity for the innovation project. Is it the innovation champion, i.e. the entrepreneur, or is it whoever provides the resource? And on the y-axis, you look at the level of resource support. Is it dedicated or is it ad hoc? All right? So everybody, in every context, be it a country or in a company, you start off being an opportunist. You don't have any kind of specific support. And in the ecosystem, if there's no specific support, obviously the innovation champion owns the equity of the innovation. And there's some pros and cons of each. There's no specific support. And what we've done in Singapore so far that can be quite interesting is that we've integrated an ecosystem that involves not only the research labs and the Institute of Higher Learning's universities research, but also we integrated it with the startups and also large corporates. So we're trying to build an ecosystem that includes these players from all three components to co-create and
very vibrant ecosystem. As an example, I mentioned that Singapore, we always listen to the government. Okay, so now Singapore government has a new initiative called 2030. We need to have 30% of our protein from homegrown foods. Okay, that's our new initiative. So all of a sudden, we now have a lot of focus on food entrepreneurship and food innovation. Okay, and so Asia right now is becoming a growing pie of sustainable food opportunities. I'm leading you to the Cargill speaker now, switching to talk about food innovation. If you look at the numbers, it's actually an impressive market opportunity. And I don't know if you know this, but Singapore, we are the first country to approve the sale of lab-grown meat. All right? And in fact, we now have a lot of research grants for looking at sustainable food production and also lab-grown meats and beef and also milk, right? But yet we have a lot of barriers for consumer adoption. So this is not a quick win. This is not an instant success. So we need to support our entrepreneurs, in this case the food entrepreneurs, with a lot of ecosystem level of support. And so now I'm going to go ahead and progress you with what we've been doing in the different levels of support ecosystem. So next up is what we call enabler. An enabler ecosystem support is an organization set up to incubate startups and to support them. Okay, but it's not in the way that actually gets involved into actually doing the work of the entrepreneur. And we have many of these incubators, both by the government, usually started by universities, okay, or sponsored by the government. And so the equity is still owned by the entrepreneur. It's dedicated resources, typically in mentorship, co-working spaces, etc. We also have commercial incubators. They also do not take equity, but they act more like landlords. So in other words, they give you the space, they give you mentorship, but they charge a little money for rent. Okay, so that's probably the second level of innovation ecosystem support that has started in Singapore. And for example, we have an incubator named Iese5, which is one that basically offers facilities, venture funding, but will charge you rent for staying there, for being part of the ecosystem. The next level of ecosystem is where we have an advocacy, where we actually provide some not only support, but also market acceleration and likely some funding as well. So here we're starting to see incubators, accelerators taking a portion of the equity and being much more involved in the operations of the startup. All right, so here's an example. You might have seen this name before called Nurasa. So Nurasa is actually an incubator, but it's a wholly owned company of Temasek. Now, I don't know if you heard of Temasek, but it is the Singapore government's sovereign fund. So it is a wholly owned subsidiary started to push some of the initiatives in the innovation ecosystem. Recall I mentioned one of our major initiatives is the 2030 food initiative in Singapore. So Nurasa was started by the government to operate as though it's a commercial accelerator, but it does the following. It works with the research partners, in this case the Singapore Institute of Food and Biotechnology, okay, to look at how to commercialize technology around sustainable food. Okay, so there's a very large food-grade facility at the center of our ecosystem. We have food process engineering, mini lab space, and scalability support. Now, Nurasa does take some equity from the startups they nurture. So this is now moving into much more involved in the ecosystem of directing the directions of the startups. And finally, I want to talk about producer. That's probably the most involved in terms of ecosystem support, where not only do you provide very dedicated resource support, but you also are involved in building the actual venture. You're actually directing it, you're actually championing and recruiting talent to actually build up the innovation project. And of course, you take a lot of equity as part of that. We call that the producer or the venture builder. Okay? And with that, I want to pause here and introduce my next guest speaker. Because one prime example of a producer type of ecosystem support, and this one is commercial, is Cargill. And you probably know Cargill is the largest agriculture company in the world and the largest family-owned enterprise in the world. Okay. They have a very large operation in Singapore. There have been many investments made by Cargill in terms of innovation. And what I'd like to do is introduce my next speaker. She is in charge of the Cargill's Digital Business Studio. It's a startup incubator. I asked her to come here to share with you the sort of success and failure stories within Cargill as part of the whole producer method of ecosystem building. So I'm going to pass the time to Zing. She will talk about Cargill, then I will come back and answer questions, okay? So with that, meet Zing, investor, entrepreneur, builder.
Hola, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Professor. Before we continue, please note that we have the question and answer open. So if you have some questions for Professor, this is the time to write and we'll help to answer some of those questions later on. A little information about me. I'm Zing from Singapore. That makes it easy to remember. I'm kind of like a startup in progress trying to find my own product market fit. I spent my first 10 years in investments. I was actually leading Southeast Asian investments doing private equity at Temasek, which is the sovereign wealth fund in Singapore. And then I helped to start this Google Temasek report on the then Southeast Asian ecosystem, which was nothing. But we put 10 million in 4 VC funds, and these 4 VC funds went on to raise 80 million each, and suddenly you had $300 million in the ecosystem, and no companies were invested. And that was actually how the ecosystem started, like what Professor had said. A lot of entrepreneurs, there's not enough in Singapore. We start looking at the region, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, and we started making a lot of investments. Eventually, one of these VCs said, "You don't feel like a investment person, you feel more like a founder. Why don't you come join us?" And so I went from private equity to venture capital. In venture capital, I invested, but I was also building a company. Eventually, I became a full-fledged founder, built a legal tech and agri-tech company, and eventually I moved and exited that company, and Cargill was going to start a digital business studio, and that was actually how I joined Cargill, just slightly under 2 years ago. So I'm very honored and happy here today to share a little bit about the digital journey at Cargill and how the company is doing it. So Cargill, as Professor mentioned, we're one of the largest privately owned company. As of last year, the earnings was about $5 billion, just so you get an impression of it. And over the last 150 years, we've been helping to connect farmers, consumers, and in the next 150 years, we really have this mandate of how do we feed 8 billion people and do it in a way that's sustainable with all of what's happening with climate change, etc. So over here, we mainly have 4 main businesses. We have animal nutrition and protein, food like McDonald's, the quick service restaurants, financial and industrial, as well as agriculture. Mainly in our digital business studio, we focus a lot on food as well as on agriculture as 2 main problem areas that we're trying to solve. And innovation has been a continuous journey, as many of you in corporates know. In the past, a lot of it was typical R&D. Over the last 150 years, we also have, on the other hand, Cargill Ventures that takes minority stake in growth stage companies beyond Series B and C. And then the Digital Business Studio was something created just about 2-3 years ago to combine two other elements. First, we started out with this thing about EDGE, which is Entrepreneurial Drive Growth Engine. It was an initial incubator. The typical, just like in Xerox, where people stay a long time, at Cargill, people also have a long longevity. And there was this idea that, hey, who is better to solve a customer problem than your own employee who faces the customers for 20 years, right? But your internal employee may know the problem that the people have, but they may not necessarily know what might be a solution. So how can we actually bring in founders to also partner these employees who knows the pain point to co-develop a solution that is relevant for the market? And with this, the Digital Business Studio was born so that you would also take in external founders. So people like myself, I was once external. I don't have food and agriculture background, but they brought me in hoping that I can bring a different way of thinking, to challenge the value propositions and come up with creative business models to make things work. And so that has been what we created in the Digital Business Studio. We invest via a tiered system. We have to go to the investment committee every 4 months, 6 months, and then 1 year with a tiered release of funds at every milestone for us to expand the team and to do more. And at each investment committee level, of course, we have to show proof that, hey, we hit the different milestones to unlock more value, and therefore we need more funds to expand. The studio model, basically, we talked about having industry depth, the team breadth. We have the founders, but we call them digital product leads, such as myself. But we also have like engineers, UI UX developers, designers and developers, all working together. And basically, we de-risk it with that tiered funding model. It's a reliable process because it's like the lean startup methodology that we'll talk about later. And then we try to have an integrated portfolio approach, where instead of one venture going out by yourself, you are hunting as a pack. So when we go out to the market, we try to understand customers' pain points, and we try to develop multi-solutions within our portfolio that can work together. So we're here to disrupt and unsettling patterns. The top 3 reasons why startups fail. Number 1, 38% they run out of cash. Number 2, 35% there is no market need, there's no product market fit. And 20% they got out-competed. Maybe they were too slow or whatever reason, you're not aware of their competitors. So for us, we think that we're built by the industry, for the industry. So we hope to know the industry a little bit better. And basically what we're trying to do is to put together our corporate resources to also look at the market needs. Because, sometimes it's hard for individual startups to get access to farms and farmers and different language and different markets, but we have the local access to actually help enable this. So what we do, there's this design thinking process, right? Lots of ideas, it's easy to come up with ideas, but what really gets you there is actually the execution. So what we do is we try to build as early as we can, just early prototypes. Maybe they are falling apart, but at least we're testing. We try to validate, come up with an Excel spreadsheet of 10 hypotheses you want to test, and we really measure it. Is this yes or no, yes or no, yes or no? And eventually, we are trying to de-risk the technical risk until the end. It's a very agile method. So it's like a corporate running like a startup. We have daily stand-ups, weekly start meetings. They really stand up, so that you are keeping things going, and it's like 5 minutes, very fast. And basically at each stage, you reduce it. We come up with the experiments we want to test. We ideate, we validate. We decide, okay, this is not working. How do we pivot? So it's a continuous learning within the group, as well as testing with the prototypes out in the field with our customers and getting their feedback on what works and what doesn't work for them. And then, of course, we talked about the metered funding. The money that they give us increase a little bit more as the risk decrease. And eventually, the whole idea is to have a spin out in about 2 years out of the Cargill ecosystem out into the market. So this is what we had talked about: define and test and validate our assumptions. And really, can we try to sell before we build? Can we get pre-commitment from the customers who would agree to pay us before we spend a few $1 million developing a solution that they don't want? Um, so I'll give you two examples of what has worked. One of them is Chicken Check, which came about as an internal project where one of the people in our poultry divisions was thinking about problems with regards to managing chickens. We're one of the largest producers of chickens as well. And what we use is an AI engine to detect stress in the chicken sound and abnormalities in the movements of the chickens, the way they walk. So those are all like remote sensors captured, and then basically we're able to get the data, we do the data processing, and then we create like digital dashboards and insights on how the flock is growing. And basically we offer this as a solution to our customers. But additionally, because we are corporate, one of the interesting things to do is, unlike a startup where you need to make money off your digital product, we can actually give this technology for free and make money from the feed, because now they have to buy more feed to feed the chickens that we produce. So that's one way to go. And basically through the app, we're able to reduce the mortality by 33%. We're able to show that we make people money, and we just basically it's really good, and it's a win for the company, it's a win for us, and we have a very close collaboration. So Chicken Check is a case of AI sensors together with data, and how do we make an age-old, raising chicken more advanced, right? Another one that is a success is actually Check. Check is a smart food locker system. It won a Consumer Innovation Award in the US, and basically in Cargill we also have a food business that we sell to McDonald's, Pizza Hut, KFC, etc. And so basically for Check, it was a food locker system that you would put in big baseball stadiums like the Dodgers game and things like that in the US. You have 100,000 people coming. You don't want everybody to be queuing up at a hot dog stand. So how can you distribute it and sort of equalize your sales to your different food partners? And when you collect your food, the drink is cold in the cold part of the fridge, and your food is hot in the hot part of it. So you're not getting this hot dog that is cooked 3 hours ago. And you don't have to miss your Coldplay concert because now you're queuing up for your food. So it actually is doing very well. Interestingly, now we'll talk about the part that is not doing so well, which is the fact that, with iCorday, this is an e-fishery kind of startup, similar to Check. What people didn't anticipate was this is actually an IoT device where you could monitor your feed in shrimp, and basically it's a shrimp software, iOS, IoT. Now, as you can see on the right, there is a software and a hardware. So similar to Check, Check is a locker system, which is hardware. When you think digital, you're thinking software, right? Mobile, code, you're not thinking hardware. But interestingly, in a lot of, in agriculture and in Southeast Asia, you don't just go completely to tech. You need enabling systems. And one of those things, sometimes it could be hardware to collect the data. And so that's actually one of the challenges and the downside of this, because I think organizationally, you have to, as we as a digital department sort of come up with innovation, sometimes we need enabling technologies like hardware. But as you would know, your cost of all these capex is very high when it comes to hardware. And so if you're asking for organizational support for hardware, they're like, hey, but you're supposed to be software. We are not in the business of producing hardware, right? So there's a lot of questions about how do you morph the business model? Do you partner? Do we not do this? So these are, some of the challenges that comes with navigating business models that comes as a result of digital innovation. The same thing with iCorday is happening with Check, where, it's fine building prototypes of lockers, but now if you're not talking about scale, that's a few, double-digit $1 million. How do we get the funds? Which organization is going to support? Because earlier on we mentioned the 4 business lines of Cargill. Nobody is producing lockers, right? So there's all these questions about what do we do in terms of helping the businesses grow. The other challenge, I guess, would be this question about whether cardio should build, invest, buy, or partner. So that this is an evolving question as we try to push the envelope of what to do. So I remember when I first joined, they were telling me, oh, don't worry, you join, you'll be a founder, in 2 years you get spun out, you lead the company as like, the CEO, you're no longer a cardio employee. It seemed like a really good deal. And then along the way, they told us, the startup ecosystem, a lot of startups are not doing so well in the current climate. There's a lot of chance to acquire these startups. And they were like, hey, maybe you guys could do M&A. And I have a background in M&A. So they were like, why don't you go acquire startups for us? And then I spent like 4 months doing this due diligence. We're going to buy the startup. Last minute, there was a management change. We changed the CEO, we changed the Chief Information Digital Officer, and then suddenly all the bricks were pulled. Like, no. We are not an M&A house. We shouldn't be acquiring startups. And then I'm like, hey, but the startup is profitable. We're getting at a fraction of the dollar. It makes total economic sense. Like, your IRR numbers are awesome. And like, it shaves us 7 years of development by buying something that's really cheap. And then the message I got was, oh, but we're cardio. Like, this little profit, it doesn't move the needle. So it's more of a hassle for us to buy this and then decide what to do with it by setting up the cost center and stuff than for us not to have it. So then I'm like, wow, but you guys just gave me the green light to do this M&A, So basically what I'm sharing is it's always a process, right? When new people come on board, you need time to learn, and to adjust and to find out what is that new organizational fit. Ultimately, the lessons learned, I guess, would be number 1, engage your senior stakeholders early. Well, we never know if they change, but if they change, then get them as soon as possible. Number 2, align with the businesses. I think one of the things that we did in the Digital Business Studio was to create independent businesses that were relevant to the market because we thought we're customer-centric. But I think ultimately you also need to think about how are you relevant to the internal business and the bottom line. So that's the second point, that it's important to also build something where there's synergy with the existing business, because after all, you're just still part of the corporate. I remember having this conversation with a very senior leader, and he was like, his comment to me was actually quite interesting. He said, look, if we are going to build something that's not relevant to cardio, then cardio shouldn't be funding it. You should be asking the cardio family office to make a direct investment. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true, right? So that's the second point, to have that business fit. Number 3 would be partner versus build. So in our case, we were looking to build and test and prototype, but maybe sometimes it's also easy to look at what is existing and could you have partnerships with them. And startups are young and hungry and they die for a partnership with a big corporate. And so it's good to try to see if we can explore some partnerships with startups before even trying to build them. The 4th would be the corporate advantage, which I mentioned earlier, blended monetization, where the startup itself may not necessarily need to be the one that makes the money, because the mother parent company can make the money by selling other like physical products instead of just the digital SaaS kind of subscription. And the last one would be patience. I think in agriculture and food, we're very patient. It's like a dinosaur taking a long time to change. But change and adoption, it takes time. And again, it's like what Steve had mentioned earlier, spending time with people internally, externally, on the ground. It really helps because change and transformation is an ongoing process. So with that, I've sort of wrapped up my part of it. That's my LinkedIn, and we'll open the grounds for Q&A. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you. I know we kind of went very fast on the content, but a lot of the information will be available to you in soft copy form. And let me try to summarize the takeaways from the 2 respective presentations. The first being Singapore has nothing to start. It's a small country, actually forced into nationhood, actually by a mistake. about close to 60 years ago, Malaysia kicked out Singapore. Okay, and so Singapore started as a fishing village with there's a small landmass, no natural resources, got kicked out of the Malaya. So with nothing, with disadvantages, our founding father, Lee Kuan Yew, looked around and said, what is there in Singapore to build a nation with? And amazingly, 60 some years later, we all have the same answer. That is talent. All the country had was people, manpower. So the entire country is around how do we make best use of the manpower of talent. So it's at a country level. All right. So many of the policies is around how do we maximize the output of our manpower, the modern word being talent. Okay. And so that's why you're starting to see recently, in the last 2 or 3 decades, this emphasis on innovation and entrepreneurship, because it's going to be one of the biggest growth engines to economies around and to companies. So that's the first takeaway. How do you turn your disadvantage into an opportunity? And that's shown in some of the policies and support. Okay. And so the second big takeaway was that we started out by accident, if you will. So there were entrepreneurs who started out because they were unhappy working for multinationals, didn't get advance, so they left and started their own companies, small companies, no government support. And then in parallel, we were trying to commercialize technology out of the research labs. So those two were going in parallel, did not touch each other. So the individual entrepreneurs started out with just themselves providing services. The IHLs, universities, had deep tech innovation, but of course the researchers didn't want to leave the comfort of the university. So in the meantime, we're trying to encourage the researchers to leave. In the meantime, we have entrepreneurs who had no intellectual property. It's just themselves and their knowledge. All right. And out of that, we've now developed to try to integrate getting startups and the universities to come together, and now most recently, we're getting corporates involved in innovation and entrepreneurship to be part of this three parts of the pie integrated ecosystem. And so that's the second big takeaway from today's talk. And the third being that I invited Zing from Cargill to share the successes and the failures from the corporate entrepreneurship, corporate builder point of view. And you can see the innovation is not easy. It requires a lot of persistence, a lot of talent, and most importantly, ecosystem support. You really can't do this as a lone entrepreneur. The previous speakers were absolutely correct. There's no such thing as a lone hero going out there to create, some. I know that's what the press writes about Elon Musk and all that, but I think that's a very Six Sigma example. The vast majority of innovations and entrepreneurship comes from a team supported by an ecosystem within the context of either a country or a company or a university. Okay. With that, we have some questions. Okay. How easy is it for young talent from Europe to find a job or establish a business in Singapore? I can't answer the part about finding a job, but it's easy for entrepreneurs to get started in Singapore, I can tell you that. We even have an entrepreneurship pass. That means if you are an entrepreneur, you can come into Singapore and start a business, and there'll be an automatic visa issued to you for 1 year. If you believe the current number is $50,000, if you bring in $50,000 of capital to invest in your business, you can have an entrepreneurship pass for 1 year, which is subject to renewable. Okay. Which is different, by the way. By the way, I'm not here to represent the Singapore government, so I'm not selling. I'm just saying, which is different than the investor pass, which requires you to invest $20 million to get. Which one is less expensive? You figure it out. I think you can do the math. Okay, second question. Can you tell us more about the livestock wearables? That's for you, my dear. I don't know much about livestock wearables, so that's yours.
So livestock wearables, one of them for measuring like methane reduction, they actually wear this mask on cows. It looks very funny. It's like a COVID mask, but it's metal. And basically, they put it, and because basically I think about like 60% of methane from a cow is from burping for stomachs, right? So burps a lot, and basically it converts. It's like a catalytic converter for a car that would then convert that into just normal water and whatever it converts into. But basically, it reduces the emission. That's an example of one wearable. The second is sometimes the tagging on the animals, depending on whether it's a swine or just now we talked about the chickens. They have sensors, so that can measure things like how the movements, are they eating well, are they walking, are they free range, are they getting good exercise, and then basically it tags them like a RFID tag as they pass through the weighing scales and stuff. You can tag the animal to see. This is almost like it is in fact like precision nutrition for the animal. So that's also one thing that we do. So these are just some examples of what wearable technologies for animals look like.
Lots of questions here. Am I getting hooked away to leave? Because if not, I'll answer maybe a couple more. No? Okay. I think I'm told to leave. So I'm going to... Anyway, I want to thank Iese and also all of you for being patient with us. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you so much. Go first.